Hello, and hello, everybody. Today is a rather odd day because Urshifu-Rapid Strike Style has been banned from Monotype, and I'll be covering why this Pokemon was banned, give a little bit of a perspective as to what may have caused the ban, and also go over what this means for water for the future. So, if you were curious about the Urshifu ban and wanted to see a perspective on it, this is the right video for you. Um, Without further ado, let's take a look at the post Sem made, and talk a little bit about some of the things he brings up. So, let's start reading. Since Monotype Premier League gave us a good sample size across many high-quality Sword and Shield Monotype games, we were able to gauge Urshifu-Rapid Strike Style's presence on the metagame more effectively, and re-voted on whether to quick ban or not. Here are the votes. Remember, when I show you these votes, don't flame the users that did the votes. But yeah, it was a majority ban. Definitely a majority ban. Chaitanya's our tier leader, by the way, so that's the only notable name I'll talk about. The rest of these are just whatever. But yeah, with this, the 6 to 8 threshold has been met, and the council has decided to quick ban Urshifu-Rapid Strike Style from the SS Monotype metagame. Due to its great offensive stats, stab, combo, and U-turn pivoting, Urshifu-Rapid Strike Style has been a huge threat in the Monotype metagame that is capable of running multiple sets, particularly Choice Band and Choice Scarf. We'll be talking a lot about these sets in a bit. On top of all this, its access to Surging Strikes and its ability in Unseen Fist combined with its other traits pushes it over the top. Surging Strikes' ability to always land in a critical hit takes advantage of Rapid Strike Style's great power to break through Pokemon with defense boosts like Corviknight and Zeraora, as well as Screams. So this is the first big talking point. So, essentially, Urshifu was able to completely invalidate Corviknight and Zeraora's bulk up nonsense, and just be able to rapid jab right through it. In the case of Zeraora, if you were Scarred Urshifu, you could just, if Zeraora was already worn down, and we'll be seeing this in a game that we'll be covering later on, you will get completely squashed by Urshifu Rapid Strikes. And if you decide to, alright, hold on, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, Corviknight also gets completely walled by Choice Band because it just ignores the defense rises from bulk up, which is really bad for Steel, and even worse for Electric. The fact that a Watermon threatens most of your Electric team is obviously not the best. And yeah, Unseen Fist makes it unscoutable in front of Protect users like Ferrothorn and Aegislash. Yeah, the unscout ability, but before we talk more about the unscout ability, let's talk about Screams. Because, as you know, Klefki and Alola Tails are like the most popular Scream users, yeah? So, on Fairy, essentially, if Urshifu came in on Rain at any time, and you didn't have a Pokemon faster than it in at the time, you basically were sacrificing a Pokemon. There was nothing you could do. Unless you had like Comfy with a Calm Mind already up, there is nothing you could do about that Mon. You just literally ate, one of your Pokemon just had to like eat the entire move and just die. Because Fairy has no consistent resists to water. At least none that I am aware of. So, yeah, Fairy just kind of suffered against it. Water had the same problem, especially if Rain was up, while Screens were up. I already talked about this in the matchup video a little bit, but yeah, it's basically really obnoxious for Ice to deal with this, and it really shouldn't even be this bad in the first place. Next up, we have to talk about its scouting inability. So, Ferrothorn and Aegislash, very vital Pokemon to Steel and Ghost and Grass respectively. The fact that Ferrothorn can't scout out what move it has, like if it has Ice Punch or not, because if Urshifu Rapid Strike Style has Ice Punch against Grass, that could potentially mean you're losing an entire Mon. But if it clicks Close Combat, Ferrothorn gets heavily damaged, obviously. And Ferrothorn doesn't run Power Whip like it does on Steel. So if you make a wrong guess with Ferrothorn, you're potentially just losing Ferrothorn. And Urshifu is pretty physically bulky, so it's not going to take a lot of damage from you. But yeah, on Steel, it's even worse, because Ferrothorn has to take a close combat, and also has to take a. It also has to decide whether or not it wants its friends to take a choice banded surging strikes, which always crits, or if it wants to take a close combat. And it isn't able to guess which one is which, because Ferrothorn stays in on surging strikes and gets a lot of damage off on Urshifu if it stays in. Or it can go into Aegislash if he close combats. Normally you'd be able to figure out which one you want to go into by using Protect, but you can't do that because of Unseen Fists. So because of this Protect ignoring ability, Aegislash and Ferrothorn just kind of don't work as pivots or even as scouters. And Steel just has to hard read every single time, and it's a constant 50-50 mind game, and it's really, really toxic. It's a very bad environment for a metagame, especially for that type. And that's just that type. If you want to talk about like other types like Poison and Opposing Water, like Urshifu basically stops Toxapex as well, because I ran a few calcs in the calculator. I'm using Araquanid for an example because Urshifu obviously isn't in the calculator yet, but like you have the 130 base attack and it's in max attack, and we have Toxapex here, especially defensive effects because that's the more popular set nowadays. But Choice Band, Thunder Punch does a ridiculous amount of damage against opposing water teams, and Zen Headbutt also does a ridiculous amount of damage against opposing poison teams. So basically you could, in theory, craft the perfect, like, so many different Urshifu moves to deal with certain specific types, and it's really, really toxic. Because it can just use Surging Strikes to go over everything, but if there's like a check that you think someone might be using a lot, you can just essentially invalidate that check by using Zen Headbutt, and it's not like Toxapex can scout it. Can't do that, because Toxapex also would stay in on Surging Strikes, but it can't do that because of Zen Headbutt. And it's because of Zen Headbutt, Thunder Punch, and other moves that Urshifu has access to that really takes it over the edge when it comes to dealing with it on most balanced teams. And that's obviously not talking about the fact that it completely crushes normal on its own, and it also completely destroys Dark and a lot of other matchups. I mean, you may think that Keldeo already did most of this, but like Keldeo was easier to deal with for those types. Not easy to deal with, not at all, but way easier to deal with than Urshifu. Let's see. Let me read the rest of this. Of course, it is important to mention Water's great team support as one of the best types in the current metagame, with teammates like Pelipper boosting the already powerful Surging Strikes with Drizzle, Slowking and Slowbro's extremely reliable pivoting using Teleport and ability to damage checks in Toxapex, Amoonguss, and Vileplume with Future Sight, and Araquanid to slow down the opposition using Sticky Web. Urshifu-Rapid Strike style finds many opportunities to wall break effectively in many matchups across the board. And yes, this is extremely true. Slowbro and Slowking weren't really like super popular to use with Urshifu, but it is undeniable that this Pokemon was extremely Teleport enabled this mod like nothing before it, because like it just imagine you just have Slowking or Slowbro in front of like one of your walls, and you have to choose whether or not you want to switch out or not, or if you want to Toxic the Slowbro, try to catch a switch. Can't do that, because Teleport just means they can stay in at any time, just take one of your moves in front of your wall. If you don't switch out your wall, they take the hit, and Urshifu comes in anyway. This examples would be Ferrothorn, Toxapex, Mandibuzz. Literally name a defensive Pokemon, and Slowbro pretty much always switches out on it, unless they're like a special attacker. That's where Slowking also comes in to deal with special attackers, and it just becomes really annoying for everyone to deal with it. And Water is already really good without Urshifu, and that's like one of the biggest problems, because it has so much team support with already good Pokemon that it just really makes it super, super strong. Rain also, they talked about Pelipper with making Surging Strikes even more powerful with Drizzle, because imagine a 75 base power move that always crits, basically hitting you in the rain. That seems extremely toxic. That's arguably almost as strong as like a choice banded Dracovish Fishious Rend. But this one ignores screens, and it also ignores defense boosts. So that's arguably stronger than a Fishious Rend in the rain. Now obviously that's arguably arguably stronger, but like, point of the matter is it's stupid strong, and it shouldn't really be like this. And the fact that Water had access to a Pokemon that was this ridiculous is actually kind of crazy. But regardless, let's talk about the rest of this post. And also, I already talked about why Toxapex, Mugus, and Vileplume aren't exactly reliable checks. They don't really go into that much detail because obviously Urshifu wasn't fully found out. After all, we've only had him for like a couple of weeks. So we didn't really see its true potential yet. But what we have seen so far is pretty obnoxious and really unhealthy for the metagame. Due to its already incredible wall-breaking potential, its signature move, and ability limiting its counterplay, and its amazing team support, the Monotype Council has deemed Urshifu-Rapid Strike style as unhealthy. We have chosen to quick ban it now, but we can potentially revisit it in the future when the metagame is more settled. This is a very good post. As you can see, I liked it because Desem puts in really good terms why this Pokemon was banned. I really like how this post was laid out because it definitely showed everything that made this Pokemon absolutely unbearable for a lot of people to deal with. This isn't just people whining about like a certain Pokemon, like the people last gen who were complaining about Toxapex and Celesteela and Mega Scizor basically invalidating their types. No, this shows how this is just generally an unhealthy threat for every single type, with various examples, not just focusing on Steel, focusing on matchups where, like Electric for example, thinking about those Pokemon, and like Grass, and basically they thought about a lot of different types while talking about this, and I love how it was worded. Also, discussing about the matchup spread, I did this list yesterday, so if you want to check that out, go look at the video. It's probably in your recommended if you clicked on this video on YouTube, but essentially, Water had very few bad matchups, because as you can see in the even matchups here, the even matchups are only even purely because of Urshifu. Well, not purely, but like it's mainly because of Urshifu. Like Electric is only scared of Water because it has a priority user, and also Barraskewda, but mainly because Urshifu is like a strong priority user and it can pick off Raichu at any moment. And because losing Raichu literally means losing the game because of Urshifu and the rest of the rain setters, yeah, that's not good for Electric whatsoever. Ice, we already talked about how Screens gets invalidated by Urshifu. We can move on from that. Poison, we'd already talked about how Zen Headbutt sets and possibly even Bulk Up sets, which weren't talked about, but they were used in MPL, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But yeah, Bulk Up sets completely ruin Poison as well. Psychic is one of the few matchups where it feels like Psychic constantly gets to keep Water in check, but even Psychic has a really hard time dealing with like Urshifu nonsense, because they're basically forced to run Slowbro or Celebi in order to deal with that mon's craziness. Because if they didn't run either of those mons, they are literally losing a Pokemon every single turn, because Alakazam can't check it due to Surging Strikes. Dragon's also a pretty fair matchup, and Grass is really truly the only good matchup, but we already talked about why this matchup, it could also be slightly in Water's favor. And it's mainly due to Kingdra, not really Urshifu as much, but like, still, the amount of matchups that are completely dependent on how Urshifu is played is ridiculous. And that's not even talking about the matchups that Urshifu straight up wins on its own, like Dark, for example. Also Rock, it also wins on its own. Ground, arguably, it wins on its own, even though Keldeo kind of ruined this type anyway. Ghost, Fairy, Steel, like, these matchups shouldn't be that winnable because of one Pokemon. But yeah, Urshifu really made this Urshifu's ban is really going to shake up this matchup chart a little bit. It's not going to shake it up too much because Rainwater is obviously still super strong, and Keldeo isn't really that much worse than Urshifu. It's just a special attacker that isn't super stupid. But yeah, the matchup chart's going to change a little bit because I feel like a lot of types are definitely going to move down in the list. And that's good, because that means Rainwater isn't stupidly oppressive as it was before, but this definitely goes to show like how oppressive Urshifu was when it was allowed on Rainwater. But yeah, even ignoring my list, we're gonna go over a couple of examples in MPL high tournament level play. of why this mon is as dangerous as it is. So first up, we have a game from Gorix versus Alvarado from week 2 of MPL. So, alright, so as you can see, we have Urshifu, Araquanid, and it's basically webbed water with no electric immunity whatsoever. And Alvarado doesn't have Galvantula, which could be perfectly fine, because Galvantula isn't necessarily a necessary, absolutely needed mon on Bug. You could skip over it if you have the proper mons to deal with it. But watch what happens in the first couple of turns. Watch closely. So Alvarado leads Sizor. Now the Sizor lead was actually kind of weird because, actually no, we'll talk about that as soon as Araquanid here gets sacked. So Araquanid got sacked, and now Urshifu comes in. So you may be thinking, well, that was weird. Why didn't Alvarado just lead Shuckle? Doesn't Shuckle just take a hit? And no. Urshifu uses Surging Strikes in Oko's Shuckle every time. So that's why he had to go into Sizor, who basically, I don't know, I'm not really sure if Urshifu really did that much against Sizor, but I guess Alvarado had to use Sizor there in order to bait out Surging Strikes, because close combat wouldn't kill, and Surging Strikes would obviously, he would just put in Araquanid at that point and Toxic it, because you would think that he is a Bandit set, which is obviously pretty wise playing on Alvarado's part. The only problem is, Urshifu isn't choiced. It's a bulk up set. And Alvarado will not be able to break this Pokemon whatsoever once it puts up another substitute. And yeah, just basically kills the rest of his team. Nothing he can do about it. He just lost the game because Urshifu was kind of broken. Now, granted, I could see that Galvantula, if he had Galvantula, he would have been able to win this game a little bit easier, but that's ignoring the fact that Urshifu could have been running Choice Scarf, could have been running Choice Band. The fact that you don't know exactly what the Urshifu could be running, because this team, it's a little ambiguous, because you don't know if it's running Choice Scarf or not. I mean, you would think it's Band because of Sticky Web, but, like, it could be Scarf. Like, why wouldn't they run Scarf to hit, like, flying types? Like, fast flying types, like a Noivern, for example, or even, like, Hawlucha on certain types. Like, there's no reason not to use Choice Scarf or Choice Band. There's no really necessary thing you have to run, because it's still going to do, like, a lot of work regardless of what item it has. And in this case, it was Bulk Up, which basically took advantage of the fact that Araquanid would have potentially walled this thing. And because of this is just not healthy. This isn't healthy at all. And Alvarado couldn't even lead with his correct Pokemon, because obviously he'd be forfeiting the game if he led with anything that wasn't Sizor in that situation. So yeah, this is a really eye-opening game to really show you, like, how ridiculous Urshifu is on its own. Now granted, Bug isn't really one of Water's best, isn't really gonna have a really good matchup against Water regardless, but against this form of Water, it probably would have had a better matchup if it didn't get absolutely destroyed by this one mon. Next replay we have is Kither versus Feliburn. Now, Kither doesn't win this replay, just gonna spoil it, but just watch with me what happens in this game. So, first things first. Kither leads Urshifu. So, in this situation, you're Feliburn. You're thinking, okay, so Galvantula is out. I'm assuming that this guy's gonna be banned. You can't do that. You can't do that in this metagame, because, as you can see, Urshifu actually turns out to be Choice Scarf. And because it turns out to be Choice Scarf, he loses his Web Setter, and potentially would have lost the entire game. And that was a really bad first turn for him, because there wasn't much else he could do. Because he couldn't scout it, even if his Galvantula did for some reason have Protect, he wouldn't have been able to scout it, because he would have just died. And there's nothing he would have been able to do there. He also would have had to deal with close combat, potentially, hitting his Rotom-Mow for a lot of damage, and Rotom-Mow is way too important in this matchup for him to lose. So he has to keep that thing healthy, otherwise he just might lose. Especially against Pokemon like Primarina, But yeah, he loses his Galvantula first turn. And also, he can't put in Pincurchin because Pincurchin would probably just die as well if it was choice banned. That's why he couldn't lead with that Mon. And you would think, oh, well, he just wins with Raichu Alola. I went over this in the MU video, but the reason why this matchup is even is because once that electric terrain goes down, and trust me, it will go down, because Raichu gets forced out by a lot, but Urshifu can literally force Raichu out once the rain gets set up. And then after that, it doesn't really need to do anything else, because Swampert and crew, not even mentioning Rotom-Mow, because Rotom-Mow is definitely a Water C team, but Water Ground C team more like, but Rotom-Mow, if Rotom-Mow even wasn't here, because like most people are running Rotom Heat and such, but Rotom-Mow in this situation literally should have won him the entire game, but you're gonna see why it won't matter in a bit. So Rotom-Mow does his thing. Toxapex is Gunk Shot, which is pretty nice. He misses one Gunk Shot here. Doesn't really matter because his Toxapex should have died. Let's see. Pinkendra comes in. As you can see, Urshifu does a crap ton of damage despite being Choice Scarf. Alright, Fellyburn ends up sacking his Magnezone. Did he have any other switch-ins? Nope, not at all. And he doesn't even know if he could switch into Raichu Raw, not that he would want to. He uses Psychic first to try and predict the Seismitoad switch-in. Alright, and he clicks Grass Knot, which Oko's a Seismitoad. Not sure why he did that, but yeah. Raichu proceeds to click Rising Voltage for the rest of the match. But in comes Urshifu-Rapid Strike. But yeah, essentially, I don't know why Fellyburn did this either, because I feel like he could have saved his Raichu a little bit if he just sacked his Rotom or went into Zeraora even, so he didn't have to get put in a bad situation. But I guess he wasn't expecting Aqua Jet. But yeah, Aqua Jet literally KO'd Raichu. Kingdra comes out, obviously, and tries to deal with Rotom. He does eventually force Rotom out. Pincurchin comes back in, but Raichu Alola is dead. Now Urshifu comes back out, and close combat kills Rotom. So at this point, all Kithar had to do was just go back into Pelipper on the Zeraora, and then just win the game from there because Urshifu is Scarf, as we've already confirmed. But he doesn't do that for whatever reason, tries to CC to Zeraora. It's a bad play, it was whatever. But what's important is that this game was absurdly close, despite the fact that Fellyburn should have had the obvious advantage. The fact that Urshifu just, like, kind of clicked buttons against his entire team, and just outsped and invalidated Galvantula, because Keldeo wouldn't have done that. Keldeo didn't invalidate Galvantula's webs, and also its threatening presence at all. Keldeo doesn't do that. And the fact that Keldeo can't do that, but Urshifu can, just goes to show like how ridiculous this Mon is, and how it just invalidates certain leads with certain types. Because, like, as we mentioned before, Shuckle, you cannot lead. Galvantula, you cannot lead. Crocodile on Dark and Ground, you cannot lead. Like, so many leads get invalidated by this one Pokemon, and it's ridiculous that this is the case. So, yeah. But yeah, that's it for the replays. We'll go over a little bit as to why, oh, that's weird, the post went away. But, yeah. There's a bunch of replays of how many, and week 2, by the way, was the first week where Urshifu was allowed. And of all the replays that you're shown here, obviously there's not a ton of water. And there's obviously a water mirror, so we're not going to cover that because that's kind of irrelevant. But that goes to show like how popular the type was. And notice how a lot of the types used are types that have somewhat doable matchups versus water. Like Poison, not Bug, but, and yeah, we already showed you in this game why using Bug was a mistake. Ghost has some potential to do well against Urshifu. We've also got grass. We got a lot of grass. We got dragon. Fire is kind of a mistake, but also fairy's kind of bad as well. We got poison. We got flying a little bit. We have electric. We have psychic. Like, there's a bunch of types that are just out there trying to get an even matchup against water. It's mainly those types that are the most popular. And you can even see that in week 3 as well. Because there's like a bunch of psychic in this game, because people realized like how good psychic was against rainwater and just Urshifu in general, and why it was so good. And water, while it didn't get a ton of usage, it just essentially became the type you had to see team, and people were being really careful around that type. But yeah, the replays don't lie, and it shows how important water was when it came to team building, and how important getting an Urshifu check was, to the fact where in the Meteoriolu 7 game in week 2, he brought a Palo Sand, if I'm not mistaken. He brought a Palo Sand, and now Palo Sand may seem really bad, but actually Palo Sand is slightly advantageous to Urshifu. And because it's slightly advantageous to Urshifu, because of water compaction, well, actually, no, never mind. I completely forgot that. That's also invalidated by the fact that critical hits are a thing. But yeah, so that game's actually irrelevant. But the point of the matter is, people are worried about Urshifu and its effect on the metagame. And basically, if you didn't have something that could deal with Urshifu, you were forfeiting the match to Urshifu. And if you couldn't play around it, you lost. And it just created a really toxic metagame for most types. But yeah, that's all about the ban and all about the potential reasoning. Now we're going to discuss like what this means for water going forward. So obviously water is going to be pretty decent still, despite all the changes. Because like rainwater is still going to be using Pokemon, obviously, and also I just want to confirm that yes, the ban is implemented, so you can go on the ladder now and not worry about seeing Urshifu single strike. But yeah, water is just going to end up running Keldeo instead, because that was essentially the mon Urshifu replaced in the first place. And yeah, you're going to be down a physical attacker, so you might want to start running like different Pokemon. But Barraskewda should fill up that role if you want a physical attacker. And in rain, it's still pretty good. On balance, though, you are going to still struggle to find a lot of good physical water attackers. Your best bets are Gyarados and potentially Azumarill. Those are your best bets for balance water. And you also obviously have Crawdon and such. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Urshifu and its effect on the water metagame, because water isn't going to be sorely missing it that much. I mean, it will, because it won't win as many matchups as easily as it did before. It has to try a little bit more now, but the matchup spread for water obviously isn't going to get shifted a ton. It's still going to be having a lot of good matchups, but now it's slightly less overtuned thanks to this Pokemon. And now with its ban, it's able to water is able to actually be not the best type in the game, hands down, and it's actually able to do things without being absolutely disgusting. But yeah, without further ado, I will say that this ban was definitely justified and will helped out the metagame quite a bit. So yeah, I do think that this Urshifu ban was definitely good, for my opinions at least. I feel at first I thought that this Pokemon was a little overrated and that it wasn't that good because of its special weakness and the fact that it wasn't super fast. But then I saw the tournament footage and I saw some of the reasoning in the post made, and after doing a little bit of research myself, looking at it a little bit more over the week that we had it for available, I was able to infer that yes, this Pokemon is indeed broken and it's actually kind of ridiculous. So yeah, Urshifu definitely broken, good ban on the council's part, and I can't wait to see how the metagame is going to develop afterwards. But yeah, don't worry, water users, you weren't significantly nerfed, and fighting users, literally, you never used it in the first place, so don't even whine about it. And without further ado, that is the end of this video. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and like for more. It helps me get this video out to more people who are potentially interested in Monotype. And and that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys all have a good day. This is Namranan signing off.